Are you eating your meals at the optimal time for health and weight loss? Today I'm going over scientific studies on how the timing of breakfast and lunch affects your weight, insulin resistance, cholesterol, and triglycerides. Hey there, I'm Mish, and I am a full-time research scientist with my PhD, and by day I conduct and publish studies of my own, whereas by night I share the results of other studies here to help you reach your weight loss, fitness, health, and nutrition goals. I got this question about breakfast timing from some of you over on Patreon in response to a recent video that's kind of a sister video to this one on how eating more calories at breakfast versus dinner versus lunch affects your weight and a ton of different health parameters. So if you're interested in that, then be sure to check out that video over here once you're done with this one. And in this video, in addition to talking about how breakfast and lunch timing affects your weight and health, I will also briefly talk about how intermittent fasting might fit into the effects I'm going to talk about. So stick around till the end if you want to get the whole story. And the first set of studies I'm going to talk about all found similar things, so I'm going to focus on a randomized controlled trial as our main example to talk about here. And in this study, the researchers gave a bunch of participants some standardized meals and snacks to eat, but they split these participants up into two groups. One group ate all of this food during a window from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., whereas the other group ate all the same food, but during a different eating window from noon to 11 p.m. And so the researchers wanted to see how eating early in the day versus late in the day, even when you're eating the exact same food, can differentially affect your health and your weight. And they found that the group that ate from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. lost 2.5 pounds over the course of 8 weeks, whereas the group that ate from noon to 11 p.m. actually gained a half pound instead. So there was a 3-pound benefit while eating the same food just from eating that food earlier in the day. And they also found that the group that ate earlier in the day had improvements in insulin resistance and cholesterol compared to the group that ate later in the day. And another study, this time longitudinal, found that eating breakfast earlier predicted more weight loss over the course of a 12-week weight loss intervention. So for example, they found that people who ate breakfast at 7 a.m. instead of 8 a.m. lost 3.5 more pounds over 12 weeks, just from eating an hour earlier, it looks like. At least this effect was predicted just by eating an hour earlier. Another study found that people who eat breakfast earlier have lower cholesterol as well as lower triglycerides. And now for lunch, another randomized controlled trial, who also gave participants all the same standardized meals, split participants into two groups. One group ate lunch at 1 p.m., these were the early lunch eaters, whereas the other group ate lunch at 4:30 p.m. And this may sound crazy to you, but there actually are some people like me who eat lunch at 4 o'clock, so that is actually a real-world thing that does happen sometimes. And the study found that after just 2 weeks, people who ate a later lunch at 4:30 p.m. had a 45% increase in blood glucose levels, so they had decreased glucose tolerance from eating a late lunch. And the researchers also found that people who ate a late lunch had decreased energy expenditure, so they burned fewer calories at rest before meals, and they also had a decrease in the thermic effect of food, so the number of calories they burn from eating food, which I explain more in a video that kind of goes with this one. And another study, this time longitudinal instead of a randomized controlled trial, found that over a 20-week weight loss intervention, people who ate lunch before 3 o'clock lost 5 pounds more than people who ate lunch after 3 o'clock. And another study, this time correlational, found that people who eat lunch after 12:30 are more likely to be obese. And they also found that for every 1 hour delay in the time at which someone eats lunch, there is a 0.75 increase in BMI on average. So eating lunch later predicts a higher BMI. So far what these studies tell us is that eating breakfast earlier and eating lunch earlier definitely seem to be better for weight loss and health because people were losing much more weight when they ate breakfast and lunch earlier. They also had better insulin resistance and better cholesterol and triglyceride levels. But one problem with this is that we can't actually know for sure that it's breakfast or lunch causing these effects because, for example, if you decide to eat lunch later, then you're also almost certainly going to eat dinner later because you just won't be hungry. If you're eating lunch at 4:30, you're probably not going to be eating dinner at 5 or 6. So it could be that maybe dinner is causing these effects, right? It could be late dinner. And that is a whole separate can of worms. I'm going to get into it a little bit in one study that I'm about to talk about. But if you are interested in a full video on eating before bed and how late you should eat for insulin resistance and all this stuff, then let me know in the comments below. But to answer the question as it pertains to this video on whether breakfast or lunch are important themselves, a study found that over the course of a weight loss intervention, People who ate earlier lunch in particular lost more weight because they looked at breakfast and lunch and dinner and found that only lunch seemed to be important in this case. However, this was not a randomized controlled trial, so we can't be sure that dinner also wasn't having a separate effect. But at the very least, it is quite clear that lunch is doing something that is not just related to when you eat dinner. So the timing of lunch, at the very least, seems to be important on its own for weight loss and likely health. And now for a quick note on intermittent fasting. What these studies strongly imply is that if you do intermittent fasting, it is much better to have your eating window be the first half of the day than the second half of the day. Or if you have a really short eating window, either way, putting it in the morning seems to be better. And a study looked directly at the combination of a 6-hour intermittent fasting window with timing it early in the day, and they found that when participants ate from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., they had improvements in ghrelin, so they had lower ghrelin, lower hunger hormones, as well as higher satiety and improved insulin resistance. So if you do intermittent fasting, it is probably a good idea to do your eating window earlier in the day rather than late in the day, assuming it's all the same to you. And on that note, please do not use this information to give yourself food rules and force yourself to eat at different times or do anything that doesn't feel natural to your body or something that you could gently ease yourself into. Because forcing yourself to eat at certain times or not eat at certain times and making yourself eat when you're not hungry is a very bad idea. I have a lot of videos on it. This used to be my main focus for a few years, so if you're interested in any of this stuff, check out my intuitive eating playlist. I'll link it here. So what these studies are suggesting is that if it's all the same to you, or if it's easy to gently nudge yourself in a direction of maybe eating a little earlier, then it might be a good idea. But if you are like me and you really, really don't enjoy eating before 10 a.m., let's say, then you should not force yourself to eat before 10 a.m., especially if it is unpleasant in any way, because that's a great way to create eating disorders. And even if you don't get to a full-blown eating disorder, it can really mess up your ability to listen to your physiological signals. And 2 follow-up videos I am thinking of doing based on this, depending on what you all are interested in, are 1, the one I mentioned, which is dinner timing and how close you should eat to bed for optimal weight loss and health and all that. Then another one, I was thinking of breakfast skipping, which is kind of a related but separate topic, so I didn't want to make one big Frankenstein video of all these things. But if you are interested in dinner timing as an episode of its own, or breakfast skipping as an episode of its own, then please let me know in the comments below. If you find these videos helpful or interesting and you want to support me in making these videos and support the channel, then head on over to the Patreon, which is where you can get bonus content and the ability to make research requests and do Q&As and all that. And that is linked in the description below. And if you are interested in making a donation with one-time support, then head on over to the GoFundMe if you want to help just support me in making these videos. I really, really appreciate all of you who have been donating and signing up on Patreon lately. It's quite frankly been amazing. Whenever I look at the GoFundMe, my mind just continues to get blown every time. So thank you so much for your generosity. It really means a lot. And if you like this video, please like it and share it so that other people can get this information and maybe optimize their meal timing if they're trying to lose weight or get healthier. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell below to stay up to date on all this science. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.